Hello everyone, happy Friday and welcome to another edition of BrainScratch. I'm your host John Lorden, and today we're going to be looking into the case of the Somerton Man, also known as the Thompson case. And this is one that you guys have been asking for a long time. It's been on my list and you've been asking for it consistently. I originally looked into it about a year ago and started researching it for a possible episode, and at some point I kind of gave up on it because I felt like it was too wide. For the type of mystery it is, there's a lot of aspects to discuss, and back then I was just getting used to the BrainScratch format, and it felt like it was too much to handle. I looked into it again this week, and I think I found a way to kind of hit all of the main points of the story and communicate it a bit better. So I feel comfortable now taking on this topic, which has a lot of twists and turns. And we're going to go through some of those and give you guys kind of a high-level overview, but please keep in mind this is just a start to the conversation. As you dig in, you're going to find that there's other aspects that I might not cover, or maybe there's additional spots of research that you're able to find. So please, as usual, I ask that you add those to the comment thread below, and let's see if we can help progress this case in some way. It is a mystery that dates back quite a bit. I usually don't go for cases this old, but it is such a big mystery that, and it's kind of popular in terms of at least the fans of this type of thing, that I really wanted to cover it. So here we go. Starting with the source Wikipedia, which I often use because it is kind of the most popular understanding of the case. I'll be sure to point out a few discrepancies that I've found in my research kind of as we go through this, but it is always a great way to just kind of get the story started. So the Thompson case, also known as the mystery of the Somerton Man, is an unsolved case of an unidentified man found dead at 6:30 a.m. the 1st of December 1948 on Somerton Beach, Glenelg, just south of Adelaide, South Australia. It is named after a phrase, tamam shud, meaning ended or finished in Persian, printed on a scrap of paper found months later in the fob pocket of the man's trousers. Now, the fob pocket, I've heard it best described as kind of being a watch pocket, and it's strange because according to some research, they're saying that the fob pocket is actually built into his regular pocket. It's just another pocket in that pocket, kind of a smaller pocket. But then in other places, you'll read that no, it's actually placed along the waistline. And as a matter of fact, the person that found the note had put it back in there and then had trouble finding it again. So a bit more like a hidden or secretive pocket that you might use maybe for a pocket watch or something along those lines. The scrap had been torn from the final page of a copy of Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a collection of poems attributed to the 12th century poet Omar Khayyam. Following a public appeal by police, the copy of the Rubaiyat from which the page had been torn was located. On the inside back cover of the book, detectives were able to read indentations from handwriting, a local telephone number, another unidentified number, and a text that resembled an encrypted message. The text has not been deciphered or interpreted in a way that satisfies authorities on the case. Now, once again, some discrepancies here. I've seen some sources say that the writing of this coded message was actually in pencil on the back cover of the book. And in terms of a book, it's a very short, I think it's only 26 pages or something like that, almost like a pamphlet. And I don't know if it had a hard cover. I think that the copy that he had might have been a type of soft cover, and it's a kind of a small book, the kind of thing that you could fit in your pocket. So what's curious about those two phone numbers is we're going to get into the details of one of the phone numbers soon, but I have not seen anything about the second phone number. I've seen absolutely no conclusions or research about that second phone number, so it's kind of strange. Jumping down to the discovery of the body, the man was found lying in the sand across from the crippled children's home. He was lying back with his head resting against the seawall, with his legs extended and his feet crossed. It is believed he had died while sleeping. An unlit cigarette was on the right collar of his coat. another discrepancy here. According to the research I've seen, there's actually a few discrepancies on this. Most of the accounts say that the cigarette was indeed lit. It was smoked more than halfway through. And I have a feeling that that is close to the truth because it comes from several sources, one of them being someone that was actually examining the scene, and he said he even looked, because of the position of the cigarette on the man's shoulder and the way his face was kind of leaning, he even looked on the man's face to see if there was any burning that had happened from the cigarette there, or on his clothing to see if it had burned through. There was no burns on either side, but he did note specifically that the cigarette was smoked more than halfway down. Now, the other thing that's interesting about this is the person that found him, there was a guy that went walking with his wife the night before. They saw the Somerton Man sitting out at the beach. At that point, they say that they saw his arm kind of shoot up and then fall down kind of in a limp fashion, but they just thought that he was a drunk sleeping it off or something like that. The next morning, that same man came out to go swimming, and he usually meets up with some friends to go swimming. He then saw that there was people crowded around the Somerton Man, and he went to see what was going on. Now, he claims that there was an unsmoked cigarette actually behind the ear of the Somerton Man, but that is the only instance that I've been able to find, at least in the official inquest information, which I'll show you guys how to get to in a little bit. That's the only instance I've seen of anyone saying that the cigarette was unlit, and also his location for where the cigarette was found doesn't seem to match the official record. A search of his pockets revealed an unused second-class rail ticket from Adelaide to Henley Beach, a bus ticket from the city that could not be proved to have been used, a narrow aluminum American comb, a half-empty packet of juicy fruit chewing gum, an Army Club cigarette packet containing 7 Kensitas cigarettes, and a quarter-full box of Bryant and May matches. What's interesting about this is we have kind of items from all over the world. They're saying that there is an American comb on him. The cigarette manufacturer, I believe, is Scottish, but the box of cigarettes that those cigarettes were found in, I believe, is from London. It really seems, I don't know if this guy might have been a traveler, but he seems to have collected things from several places around the world. According to the pathologist John Burton Cleland, the man was of Britisher appearance and thought to be aged around 40 to 45. He was in, quote, top physical condition. He was 5 feet 11 inches tall, with hazel eyes, fair to ginger-colored hair, slightly gray around the temples, with broad shoulders and a narrow waist, hands and nails that showed no signs of manual labor, big and little toes that met in a wedge shape like those of a dancer or someone who wore boots with pointed toes, and pronounced high calf muscles like those of a ballet dancer. What's interesting about that is one of the doctors that looked into this case actually really drilled down on that point about how this guy's calves were developed, and even suggested that he possibly was used to wearing high heels for his calves to have developed in that manner, and talked about the fact that they kind of appeared feminine in nature. These can be dominant genetic traits, and they are also characteristic of many middle and long-distance runners. He was dressed in a white shirt, red and blue tie, brown trousers, socks and shoes, and a brown knitted pullover with fashionable gray and brown double-breasted jacket. All labels on his clothes had been removed, and he had no hat, unusual for 1948, or wallet. Now, of course, I'm really curious about him not having a wallet. How does that disappear? Does someone take it from him? We know that he was spending money at some point because he was buying a train ticket and a bus ticket, and there was no money, I believe, found on him on its own. So means of identification and also his means of being able to pay for things seems to be missing. That has never been found since. An autopsy was conducted, and the pathologist estimated the time of death at around 2 a.m. on the 1st of December. The autopsy showed that the man's last meal was a pasty eaten 3 to 4 hours before death, but tests failed to reveal any foreign substance in the body. Apparently, a pasty is a type of pastry that is usually cooked with, sometimes with meat and potato or some types of vegetables in it. Sounds almost like an old school type of Hot Pocket, but apparently that was his last meal. Although poisoning remained a prime suspicion, the pasty was not believed to be the source of the poison. Other than that, the coroner was unable to reach a conclusion as to the man's identity, cause of death, or whether the man seen alive at Somerton Beach on the evening of the 30th of November was the same man, as nobody had seen his face at the time. So outside of that one couple that I mentioned that saw him, there was another couple that had seen him. There was basically a handful of witnesses that saw someone sitting in roughly the same position the night of November the 30th. But what they're calling into question here is, was that truly the same guy? There's even one eyewitness who says that they saw a well-dressed man carrying someone else, like over his shoulder, down on the beach that night. And in case you haven't got the hint yet, a lot of this stuff is pointing towards the theory that this is some type of spy activity. You have a secret code being written on a book. The book was ditched somewhere. Essentially, it was thrown in the back of a parked car that belonged to a doctor. We know that that is the same book because the piece that was tore out of it was found on the Somerton Man. And people are wondering, why would he have thrown it in the back of a car? Did he throw it in the back of a car is what I'm wondering. If someone did this to him, it's possible that they took the book, got whatever information they needed out of it, and then chucked it in the back of this car. But in either case, why put it somewhere where someone's going to find it? Why not throw it into a trash bin? I'm really not certain. So a lot of people that look into this case really kind of peg into the spy theory. This is right before the Cold War was starting. We're coming into the 1950s here, and all those types of thoughts of G-men and FBI agents and stuff like that. So it occurs to me that just the timing of when this story happened and what was going on in the popular culture mindset at that time is going to lead a lot of people to that conclusion. I can't really denounce the conclusion. I don't know if I necessarily agree with it. The thing about all of his tags being removed from his clothes is kind of interesting, but if you look into the actual inquest documents where there are multiple people that have been interviewed about this occurrence, one of the little tidbits you'll find there that you don't necessarily hear in these retellings of the story is that the threads that were holding those tags into place were also removed. So to me, that could mean that this is a person that just didn't like tags in his clothes. Maybe he didn't like the way they felt on him. Maybe he didn't like having his clothing identified if he was worried about social appearances or something along those lines. But it would seem to me that if it was in an effort to disguise his identity, you would cut the tags off, but you wouldn't sit there and pick out all the threads that were holding that tag in place. And it's pretty funny that in these retellings of the story, you really don't hear that factoid too often. Discovery of the suitcase. On the 14th of January 1949, staff at the Adelaide railway station discovered a brown suitcase. It was believed that the suitcase was owned by the man found on the beach. In the case were a red checkered dressing gown, a size 7 red felt pair of slippers, 4 pairs of underpants, pajamas, shaving items, a light brown pair of trousers with sand in the cuffs, an electrician's screwdriver, a table knife cut down to a short, sharp instrument, a pair of scissors with sharpened points, a small square of zinc thought to have been used as a protective sheath for the knife and scissors, and a stenciling brush as used by third officers on merchant ships for stenciling cargo. Now, another little factoid that seems to disappear in the retelling of this story is the tools that are found. They're mentioning the table knife that has been sharpened down to a different type of instrument, a pair of scissors that have been weeded down to very sharp ends, and in particular the zinc plate. Those are common tools for creating stencils back in those times. So it seems to me like this was a stenciler of some reason. I did see one television special where a detective said that perhaps he was on a ship and he was responsible for stenciling. That's where that theory about merchant ships and him being a third officer came from. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I'm sure there were other professions where stenciling would have been appropriate. I'm sure, on businesses and whatnot. So, but it does appear to me that if he's bringing his tools with him like that, He is either thinking he is going to a job or having his tools with him so he could possibly make money wherever he's going. Outside of that, just the number of clothes that you're talking about here, this does sound to me like this is a man that was traveling somewhere for a short period of time. I don't know if that amount of clothing would really be realistic for back in those times for being your whole wardrobe. I kind of don't think so. And there's something very major missing from these clothes. Socks. There are no socks in the suitcase. He is found with a pair of socks on him, but I know that I've had trips that I've taken where I've forgotten to pack my socks, and perhaps that is the type of case that's going on here, but let's continue. Also in the suitcase was a thread card of Barber brand orange waxed thread of an unusual type not available in Australia. It was the same that is used to repair the lining in a pocket of the trousers the dead man was wearing. All identification marks on the clothes had been removed, but police found the name T. Keene on a tie, Keene on a laundry bag, and Keene without the last E on a singlet. Little bit of dispute around this. First of all, in the official records, Wikipedia actually has this incorrect. On the laundry bag was also the shorter spelling Kean, which matches the spelling that was on the singlet, which I believe a singlet is essentially just like a sleeveless shirt, like an A type shirt. T. Keene is on the tie, and in one of the television specials you will see that actual piece of evidence. I don't know that I necessarily agree with it saying T. Keene, and as a matter of fact, someone else stepped up and said they don't think that that's T. Keene. They think that the first letter is actually a J, and it's Keanic, K-E-N-I-C, I believe, K-E-A-N-I-C. They ran searches for all different variations of this name in terms of missing people and notified other countries, and they could not get any feedback about missing persons cases that matched those name combinations. But it is curious that the only thing we have for a name on this person is coming in the form of this Keene, K-E-A-N, which is at least spelled on two separate garments, and then a longer form of it that I can't say is just an E at the end. Police believe that whoever removed the clothing tags purposely left the Keene tags on the clothes, knowing Keene was not the dead man's name. Now, that assumption, I don't know where it comes from. I can't find it in at least the official inquest information. I really don't know how they come to that conclusion. His suitcase was left at the station and then found later. Did someone take his suitcase ticket from him, which was not found on his body, go back to the station, redeemed the ticket, but then put the case back into storage there after removing all the tags, and once again, I want to point out, removing the threading that was holding the tags into place? Really does not seem feasible to me. I think that what is much more realistic is this expectation that for some reason this guy did not like tags on his clothes and he removed them whenever he could. The term Keene, does it mean something else? Is it some type of acronym for maybe a business that he had worked for or something along those lines? I don't know. Is it truly his name? I do think that it is somewhat possible. This assumption here that they could just discount it, I don't necessarily agree with. A search concluded that there was no T. Keene missing in any English-speaking country. In fact, all that could be garnered from the suitcase was that since a coat in the suitcase had a front gusset and feather stitching, it could have been made only in the United States, as this was the only country that possessed the machinery for that stitch. So once again, guy looks like he's English, smoking cigarettes that I think are manufactured in Scotland, but has them in a pack that comes from London, has an American comb on him, and now his jacket is identified as being made in America. If he's not traveling the world himself, he's at least buying things from people that have traveled the world. So very, very interesting. Just another note, I did bump into one person's opinion in the inquest information about him potentially being a boxer. They talk about the size of his shoulders. He is also missing a considerable number of his teeth. And if you do consider what some people are saying about his calves and his toes and the way that they're shaped. It is possible, I think, if he was training a certain way, to be light on his feet and to be moving around a lot, that type of development might occur. So just another thing to put out there. I don't see that theory covered in a lot of places. I only found it by kind of digging into the details on this case a little bit. Just wanted to share that with you guys. Here we have a picture of the actual scrap of paper, which certainly has a very distinctive font. And they did an analysis to test the actual paper to the book that was found by the doctor in his car, and they did confirm that it is the same paper. That scrap did definitely come from the doctor's book. Now, what's interesting about the doctor's book is the square that was tore out to get that piece of paper is actually much larger. So it's almost like he may have tore out a big section to get that wording, and then perhaps when he was sitting at the beach, or maybe when he was on the bus going there or something, he kind of tore at the paper further to get it down to this particular square. In the back of the book were faint indentations representing 5 lines of text in capital letters. The second line has been struck out, a fact that is considered significant due to its similarities to the 4th line and the possibility that it represents an error in encryption. So let's jump to a picture. Here's a kind of a close-up of it. And there's a couple things that people notice. First of all, they're not sure if this is an M or a W. You do see other M's happen in the text, like here, and it does not seem to match those. My personal opinion is that this is a letter W, and we see it happen once again here. Here is the line that's crossed out. People think that this is an error because if you look down here, you will see almost the exact same line happening, at least up to the LIA. Down here, there's a B that's added between the A and the O. But outside of that, people really don't know what to make of this. Something that's strange that I noticed is on this S here, you have this little slash through the middle of the S. I'm really not certain what that could mean. And above the O, on this 4th line here, there's this big giant X, and I'm not sure if that's some type of indicator. I don't know. A lot of people do believe that this is a cipher. This is some kind of code, like something the Zodiac Killer would do, or something like that. I looked into this quite a bit, and there's opinions all over the place, and there are people using tools. They're using computer programs now trying to analyze this. And the first assumption I came to when I saw this was, I wonder if he's trying to memorize something. And I say this because I've done, I've had to memorize scripts before, and in doing that, there are certain tricks you can do to help you with that. One of them is doing the words backwards, which is kind of a little bit of a well-known thing for actors. But I was wondering if he was taking the first letter of each word of a sentence. And there's a lot of people that make that assumption, and some of the programs that have been run against this are also coming out to at least have statistical probabilities that match that conclusion. That essentially these are the first letters of some sentence. Now, the big question is it a sentence that is known? Is it something that is in another piece of art, perhaps? I did some searching against the actual text of the Rubaiyat, and the easiest thing I could look for was this letter Q right here. If any of you are Scrabble players out there, you know there's not a whole lot of words that start with the letter Q as opposed to some of these other letters. But I did a search in the Rubaiyat for every instance of the letter Q. It does appear as the first letter in some words in there, only in a few instances, but none of the combinations of the letters around it matched the other words that happened in those. So my gut is that it is not from that book. I should say my gut feeling is that it is not from that book. I believe that it does appear to almost follow the same prose structure as that book. For example, if you count the number of words, if that is truly one sentence up there, and then look at the source book, you will see that the poems kind of have 8 or 9 words per sentence in many of the sentences. So I think potentially this could be poetry. I don't know if it's published poetry. I have a feeling that he might have been inspired by what he read through this book and perhaps wrote a poem of his own and was trying to recite it, maybe not remembering all of it properly. And that's when he put the wrong line in the wrong place and then remembered, oh no, that wasn't the second line, cross that out. Here's the second line, here's the third line, and here's the fourth line. So it has been compared by many programs against popular texts, just using that idea of initialism. I believe it's what it's called, the first letter being included here. And it doesn't seem to match any popular texts, at least as far as information that I've seen. So my hunch is, I think this is a personal poem. Outside of this, other people sometimes talk about, he was potentially poisoned. Was he drugged? Was he mad? Are these ramblings? It could certainly be. It could certainly be that these letters don't mean a whole lot of anything. But considering they're on the same page with a phone number, I have to think that they likely mean something. There's even some people that theorize. I saw a YouTube video where they were theorizing that these were some kind of nuclear codes or something like that. I don't think it's anything that important. I think it's something, you could say that personal items might be as important. But I do believe that this is a personal message that he was trying to recall himself. And this is mostly a memorization exercise of some kind. But that is purely my opinion. An unlisted telephone number was also found in the back of the book, belonging to a nurse named Jessica Ellen Jo Thompson, born Jessie Harkness, in the Sydney suburb of Marrickville, who lived in Mosley Street, Glenelg, about 400 meters, 1,300 feet north of the location where the body was found. When she was interviewed by police, Thompson said that she did not know the dead man. She said that she did not know why the dead man would have her phone number and chose to visit her suburb on the night of his death. Now, I have found in another article where someone states that they saw this man go up to her actual house, knock on the door. It appears that she wasn't home, and he left. But I think this is much too much to be a coincidence. He is very close to her home location. The book has her phone number on it. He has a piece of the book on his dead body. Just the randomness around that is beyond explanation to me. It seems to me that these things could certainly and in high likelihood are somewhat connected. Wikipedia has a whole entire section just on reported identifications. There are many people that stepped forward saying that they knew who he was. None of those things have been proven. Now we get to what's known as the Abbott investigation. In March 2009, a University of Adelaide team led by Professor Derek Abbott began an attempt to solve the case through cracking the code and proposing to exhume the body to test for DNA. I have to say that Professor Derek Abbott has done a very good job of putting materials together on this case. You will find the link down below. And this is where I was able to review some of the criminal investigative branch reports as well as the inquest documents. And if you only have time to look into one item from his website, I highly recommend that you check out the inquest documents. There is just a lot of interviews from people that were on the scene, and that's where you're going to get some of those tidbits that aren't coming along with kind of the popular folklore of the story. Outside of that, he also has links to the actual code that was found, so you can check that out for yourself there. Once again, I can't tell from this image if this code was truly written this way, if it was indented as it was suggested in the Wikipedia article. It looks to me like someone has digitally written over some of this code. So I have a feeling that it is truly indentations that were taken from a photograph, and then actually not even digitally, someone could have used a marker to try to go over that photograph and note what was written. It's just some of this really looks like marker. It looks like the lines have been gone over more than once in some places. But outside of that, he has a copy of the Rubaiyat known as the Wells copy. They had put the word out to many people saying, hey, we want to find a copy of this edition that is as close to matching the piece of paper as possible. And this is a complete scan of a copy that is extremely close to matching the edition. You can see the font here is almost a perfect match. And if you are particularly interested in some type of cipher or cryptography angle, it's believed that you want a copy that is as close to possible, because sometimes the font might change, that might shift what words happen on what page, and if you do need this actual text to crack the code, obviously other reprints of this might not work for doing that. But both of these big pieces of the puzzle you can find here on the website, managed by Professor Abbott. He's also pretty active. If you look into multiple videos on this, you're likely to see him pop up, as well as a podcast that I bumped into on this that has just recently done several parts on this story. The podcast is known as Astonishing Legends, which I'll have a link to down below. And the hosts do a very good job of covering this extremely wide case. They do talk to Professor Abbott for themselves. They have an interview with him that they go over in the second part of their series. So there is certainly some good information to be gleaned from this podcast. Now, a few things that are interesting about the Somerton Man is he has a few genetic anomalies, and it appears that the son of this woman, that her phone number was on the back of this book, might share these genetic anomalies with him. In June 2010, Abbott obtained a photograph of Jessica Thompson's son Robin, which clearly showed that he, like the unknown man, had not only a larger simba than cavum, but also hypodontia. The chance that this was a coincidence has been estimated as between 1 in 10 million and 1 in 20 million. The media have suggested that Robin Thompson, who was 16 months old in 1948 and died in 2009, may have been a child of either Alf Boxall or the Somerton Man. Alf Boxall is an interesting character in this. Jessica essentially claims that she did give a copy of this book to someone when she was working as a nurse, but the man's name was Alf Boxall. At that point, authorities went, hey, this must be our guy. We think we found him. But they found Alf alive and well, and he actually still had the copy of the book that Jessica had given to him. She had even written in the beginning of the book, and all that is found and known. So we know the Somerton Man is not indeed Alf. However, considering, here's a picture of the actual ear thing they're talking about. Essentially, this part up here is bigger than this part down here, and that is extremely rare. The hypodontia is, I believe, when the teeth right outside of your big teeth are missing on both sides. And I don't know about this one because I saw just in one of the videos I was watching a very brief clip of, it looked like it was a mold of his teeth that was right below a plaster bust of his face. And in that instance, the gap for the teeth to be there was still there. It's like the teeth were just missing. If we go back to that theory that he was potentially a boxer, would it be hard to believe that he was missing a bunch of teeth? Not for me personally. What are the odds that you would only take out those side teeth and not one of your main ones? Might not be as high. So I don't know in particular. I'm definitely not any kind of dental expert, but it just occurred to me when I saw that particular set of teeth that, hey, could those teeth have been knocked out if he was a boxer of some kind? I think it's reasonable. I'm not sure how probable. According to a 2015 feature in California Sunday, Derek Abbott married Rachel, the daughter of Roma Egan and Robin Thompson, in 2010. So let me just break that down for you. Basically, the professor that's been investigating this whole thing, and it might even be his life's work at this point, I mean, he's definitely received a lot of media attention for it, wound up marrying into the family of Jessica, essentially Jessica's granddaughter, if I got that right. Yeah, because Robin Thompson was Jessica's son, and he married Robin Thompson's daughter, Rachel. Wow. Talk about getting close to your material. And that effectively means that he might have now married into the family of the Somerton Man, and he actually has 3 children with Rachel, and it could be that his kids are the great-grandchildren of the Somerton Man, possibly. So on top of Professor Abbott's website, on top of the Astonishing Legends podcast, I did find a YouTube channel called Foxglove 48, and they have several different features on this particular case. I recommend that you certainly check these out. And this feature that occurs, they call it Somerton Beach Mystery, parts 1 through 3. That is a special that aired in the 70s. It's kind of cool to watch a clip from back in that time looking into the same case. But they actually have a bunch of the items there that they go through, and there's very good footage of them going through these items that were found, particularly in the suitcase. It is my understanding that these items have since been lost and or destroyed. No one knows where the book is. I think the suitcase was destroyed as evidence was expunged from the department. I don't even know. I've heard accounts both ways about the actual slip of paper, that it was lost, and I've heard someone else say, no, we have it. I don't know which way to go on that, but most of the evidence in this case has been lost. There was a plaster bust made of the man, and there's now a digital version of it where you can see a scan of the plaster bust. So I'll have a link to this article down below as well. And this article goes into a former UK detective named Gordon Kramer, who is analyzing the code, does believe that some of it is related to Morse code letters that were found in the World War II radio operator's manual. But then on top of that, he thinks that there could potentially be microwriting within this code, essentially tiny little letters that make up these larger letters. This is why I've really been trying today to find a solid answer to, is this code coming from indented information, or is this literally handwritten and we're looking at photographs of what was actually handwritten by the Somerton Man? I am not at a point where I can say that I have found that answer. If it is indeed coming from indented information, which means it was written on some other piece of paper, perhaps on top of this book when he was writing, then this theory that there is some type of micro letter happening in there, I would think is absolute junk. I don't think that that is possible at all, that the micro writing would have transferred through another sheet of paper into that book and then been reasonably found and still be able to be analyzed. I think the feasibility of that is practically zero. However, if it is his original writing, if it is his ink put to that paper or pencil, as I've seen in many cases it referred to as, then he might be onto something here. I have to say, after reading this article, I'm really not sold on it. Even the terminology he's finding, he's saying that he thinks he found the name of an experimental aircraft at the time or something like that. I don't know. Just feels like another person that really wants this to be connected to some type of spy story. I don't know. Just for me personally, it doesn't seem to hold a lot of stock, but that's just where I'm at with it now. My opinion can certainly change, so if you guys find more or better information to support that, please drop it in the comments below. There's a Reddit thread here I'm also going to include, and it's kind of analyzing the code, but you'll see what's more interesting to me is the trend of the conversation and what happens. By the time you get to the bottom of this Reddit thread, it is people trying to determine what sentences those letters make up. Essentially, the people in this thread come to the same conclusion that I did, come to the same conclusion that the students that are running programs against this data did. We all seem to believe that it is initialism, that it is the first letter of each word in a sentence going on here. So if you want some different thoughts on what those sentences could be, including some people making jokes, quite frankly, be sure to check out this Reddit thread on it. Now, around all that, we still do have some information. This came out in 2013. 60 Minutes did a special on this case, and we can see there's some new information that shook out. Well, at least an opinion. I'm really not sure if it's solid information or not. Tonight, 60 Minutes reveals for the first time that the Somerton Man was romantically linked to Somerton Park nurse Jessica Thompson, who lived on Mosley Street, just meters from where the man's body was found slumped against a wall 65 years ago. Her daughter, Kate Thompson, says she accepts her mother was a Soviet spy who may have had a hand in the murder of the Somerton Man, also a suspected Russian agent. She told the police that she didn't know who he was, and certainly I know nothing. Kate tells 60 Minutes. She did know, and she told me that it was a mystery that was only known to a level higher than the police force. Kate says her mother also knew how to speak Russian, though she never explained to her how or why she knew how to speak Russian. I have to take stories like this with a huge grain of salt, and I'll tell you, in all the cases I've reviewed, and granted I've been at this for a couple of years now, I have never seen an instance of a family member coming forward with one of these, I'm connected to something that is a much cooler story than me, and having that information verified. I just have not seen it. I talked about this on the D.B. Cooper episode. I talked about this a lot on the Zodiac Killer episode. Many people want their history to be a lot more glamorous, and in particular their family's history to be more glamorous than it actually might be. Is Kate lying about this stuff? I don't know. Did she get a lot of attention for saying this? It seems so, because she got a television special. She had articles written off of the television special. Is it feasible that her nurse mother was working as an agent of some kind? Possibly. That Alf guy that I was telling you about, apparently he did work in some type of intelligence work, and he wound up with a copy of that book also from her. Is it possible that the Somerton Man maybe had interacted with her previously and she gave him that book and included her phone number? I think it's certainly possible. He got that phone number from somewhere. It's not a random event that he had that phone number. So is there a chance that they were romantically involved? Well, this is where it's going to come to you guys. So a big part of the podcast and several other interviews that I've seen from Professor Abbott are pushing for people like you and me to sign a change.org petition. And I know some of you might be critical of those petitions out there. Some of you might be critical of the thought of digging up this person to run DNA testing. I totally get that. However, if you believe that the potential offspring, the potential grandchildren and great-grandchildren have a right to know if they're related to this man or not, I would encourage you to visit the link below where I'm including the change.org petition. And as of when I'm shooting this, they are only 162 signatures away from their goal of 5,000 signatures. And this petition has been going on for years now. I personally think it might be pretty cool if BrainScratch was the thing that pushed this petition over the edge and they could finally submit it to the authorities and quite possibly get something done to get some testing around this case. I'm still a little on the fence about it because I do think that this family could test in other directions. For instance, we know that she was married to a man at that time. Why not test some of his DNA? Would it be easier to exhume him? I don't know. Is it possible that there might be a hairbrush somewhere that still has some active samples of his or some personal effects that they can extract DNA from? I've heard no conversation about that possibility. Everyone is focused specifically on the Somerton Man and extracting his DNA. And there might be good reason for that. Outside of trying to link him directly to these potential family members, if nothing else, doing a DNA analysis might tell us what family he could belong to. For example, some DNA would register very highly for a particular part of the world, potentially even giving us a surname that he could be related to. So it might help crack the mystery of who this man really was. I don't know if I'd be all that surprised if it came back, oh my God, his name is Keen? I don't know. So, brain scratchers, that's my initial jump into the Somerton Man. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this one. I know it's a really big topic, a lot of twists and turns. There's a lot to go into. You have many links down below to get you started, and quite honestly, there's a lot more information than that. For a case this old, I am extremely surprised at how much digital information still exists around it. Even if you consider that there's evidence that has literally been destroyed and lost through the years, the traces of this case and its investigation are pretty readily available online. And I think it's in large part thanks to Professor Abbott's efforts. But even outside of that, there's a big community of people interested in this case out there. So no, you can dig in for days on this case. Just do a YouTube search. You'll see there are many, many, many videos going into this. And Google search will, I mean, seriously, you'll be spending days going through all this stuff. So if you do, I look forward to seeing what you find. Please be sure to come back here and let us all know. Share some of that knowledge with us so we can continue this dialogue in the comments below. And if you guys find something really compelling, of course, I'll be sure to do a follow-up video on this because I know this case is huge. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Have a great day, everyone. Nice weekend. I'll catch you on the next show on the Ward and Arts channel.